President Bush was reelected at the end of 2004, no one would have anticipated that there could be a perfect economic storm that would hit in his second term. Whether it does materialize then or later, what we've heard on this program of tomorrow, that it is very possible. In fact, you can virtually predict an economic storm that will drop the bottom out of the United States if there isn't a major change in American behavior regarding borrowing. With me is Mike Schuster, who is a professor in an MBA program at a West Coast university. Hi, Mike. What do people believe, really, the average person, a student going to an MBA program, somebody in their early 20s, finished their bachelor's degree at a university in finance or business management, administration, would be impossible? What would an typical American business person think is impossible to happen on the downside?
I think on the downside, I think they still have a lot of faith, that the United States economy is still going to be a great strength out there compared to Europe, compared to China. And I think that they're always feeling, when they go out into the workaday world, that they feel there's going to be great strength in what the dollar is out there today. And I think, at the very bottom side, do they ever feel there can ever be any kind of collapse that could go on in the economy? I don't think that they view it that way, although there is becoming some fear. But I think more importantly, I think that there's a habit that goes on in the economy that we have here, that the dollar is going to be the one that's going to be the global strength. And it's unheard of and unthinkable to think that someday it could be the money that comes from China, from Europe, could become the great strength and the power of reserve.
What would be the perfect storm that could precipitate that change, that would force that change?
Every economist has their own view of what the perfect storm could be, but certainly they all agree with the fact that it's going to be an unfavorable economic trend, more than one trend that comes from a different path. Today, what you would have to say is the perfect storm, which we see is brewing today, which could come together, which could have very poor effects on the United States economy. Number one is the fact you can't spend yourself rich. So the almost $500 billion deficit that we're running in the United States today is one of those storms that is coming to the forefront.
So as the years roll on, you have $500 billion year after year, or 350 billion of the U.S. government borrowing, plus $500 billion, almost $1 trillion if you add it up, of people, consumers spending more, and then foreigners lending that money to banks.
Right.
That adds up to be trillions and trillions of debt.
And to compound that, what you have now, because of all the imports, is that you have Japan and China now, and Europe, have the dollar in their banks. And now for us to prop up the economy and keep growing with it, we have to borrow. We got to, import the dollar back in. And we do that through our bonds. We go to auction and we sell our treasury bills and bonds. And the other third party to this that could be coming in as a storm that's going to add to the perfect storm is that because the economy has been flat in the United States over the last 3 years, what we have to do is we have to look toward trying to keep the interest rates down. Because we want the business inside the United States to be borrowing that money also to be going through some expansion stage. So you have a quagmire going on here, because what is going on is we also got to bring in money to pay for that debt. And unless we put the interest rates up, that excess money that's sitting in a Chinese bank or a Japanese bank or a European bank is not going to want to put the money here and be buying the financial securities that the United States has to offer them if the rates are low. So it compounds the fact that we're stuck with having to put the interest rates a little bit higher because we produce too many dollars out there because of our debt. And now all of a sudden we have those dollars abroad that are coming back into the United States, importing our own greenbacks back in, and haven't put the interest rate up.
You've also mentioned that the Chinese, the Indian economies are about 2.8 billion, 10 times larger number of people. And they're going to want money. They're going to have their own businesses. So they could actually offer higher rates of return by keeping the money there than trying to bail us out, which could, again, cause the demand for dollars by U.S. entities, government and business, to get more and more expensive. Now, what would happen if there was a decision made on one of these big governments that they just didn't want to have the dollar anymore?
They have hyperinflation for one. If any country out there is, getting more respect in the euro or more respect in the currency because of the GDP growth and all the things we've discussed tonight, what would happen is that the demand for the dollar would begin to abate.
Could it collapse
It
if
could.
they just decided to switch to a different currency?
9/11, I believe, again, has taught us that anything can occur. Yes, I mean, if what is really trying to crop up the dollar today? I mean, they're cropping up the dollar today because they believe that the marketplace, the United States, is still strong. The facts are is that Europe and China and Japan still depend upon the marketplace here. But as years peel by, if we're still printing more money and still running in the red, money works as supply and demand like anything else does. So what's going to happen is that as Europe gets much stronger in the economy that they have within themselves, and if they trade, if they change trading partners over and saying, that China is more fiscally responsible than what the United States is, and they begin to trade more with them, and Europe is very good about keeping the balance of trade, in check, and their money in more of a parity zone, which we have not done. Yes, I mean, at some point in time, if the economies begin to support and back the money supply in a nation that isn't ours, in China, India, Japan, the Europeans, then there could be a very huge fall off for the dollar. If the dollar doesn't have the purchasing power and that type of strength in the globalized economy that we today see, yes, there could be a collapse.
And people wouldn't want to buy any more paper.
No.
No, I'd make that decision. And so inevitably we come to the question, is that going to happen? Is it possible there could be an economic 9/11? Well, get the Good News magazine. It may not sound like good news, but frankly, knowing the truth and the possibilities is very important. This is a magazine of spiritual understanding. You're not going to find it anywhere else in the world, this kind of incisive understanding. Is there an Osama bin Laden in the future? There's an ancient prophecy that indicates at the time of the end, there's going to come an economic Osama bin Laden that really could be the one that puts the gun in America's head. We'll be right back.